We are again at the table, celebrating the life and the death in the resurrection of Jesus. Here we are at the first quarter of 2025, thinking about what it cost Jesus for us to be at this table. It's beautiful. The trays are shiny. The grapes look luscious. The bread looks delicious. The music was incredible leading up to this point. Just as when Jesus began his journey from the cradle to the cross, his life was beautiful. Let's get real for just a moment or two. Not every moment in my life, and not every moment in your life, not every moment in all of our lives are as beautiful as this table that Nancy has put together. And so we have had a goal this year of learning as a church throughout the whole year how we as a church can keep our hearts beating in sync with Jesus, no matter what our lives are going through, no matter what crises we are facing, no matter what struggles we have, no matter what problems we're going through. Because I'm going through stuff, you're going through stuff. It's called life. And life is messy at times. So how do we as a congregation keep beating with the heartbeat of Jesus through good and bad? And so we have broken up the whole year into talking about this. And, you know, there are 4 quarters in the year, and there are 4 segments we're going to be talking about throughout the year. The first one was knowing the heartbeat of Jesus, and the second one is feeling the heartbeat of Jesus. The third one will be living the heartbeat of Jesus. And of course, the 4th quarter, sharing the heartbeat of Jesus. But if we think about what we've been doing this whole quarter, it is learning to know the heartbeat of Jesus. And what I want to celebrate with you here this morning at the end of this quarter in communion is our commitment that we have made every week this year to learning how to know the heartbeat of Jesus. So in our first series this year, we talked about if the truth be known, and basically what we talked about is, do we really know the truth? We talk about the truth. We say we have the truth. We know all prophecy. We know the 3 angels' message. We know the signs of the time. But do we know the truth? And what we said is there's a difference between truth with a little t and truth with a capital T. And little t truths are truths like the Sabbath, like the 2,300-day prophecy, like the 3 angels' message, like the spirit of prophecy. But capital T truth is, do you know the one who is the way, the truth, and the life? And then we talked about loving with all your heart. And we used the Shema prayer out of Deuteronomy 6 as our core idea there, where the word Shema means to hear, to listen, to obey. And we talked about for a whole series about you can't know the truth if you don't know it with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength. The truth is not a set of 13 Bible studies we go through and we finish. The truth is this continual relationship we have with the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. As we beat in sync with him. And to be in sync with him, you must walk in his rhythm. And yes, you are allowed to use the word rhythm in an Adventist church. That was a joke. You should have laughed. We'll work on that. You can't say you know the truth. You can't say you live the truth. You can't tell me you walk in the truth if you don't have the rhythm of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit. The only way you know you're doing right is if you're walking in the Spirit, because Paul told us in Galatians 5, it's only that rhythm for which there is no law against. So we're at this junction point at the communion table where we're transitioning in our sermonic year from knowing the heartbeat of Jesus to one of those words that sometimes Adventists don't like. Because we like to be cerebral. We like to be smart. We like to have all the knowledge. But what about feelings? We're going to transition here at the communion table to feeling the heartbeat of Jesus. Here's the thing. I know a lot of things. And I'm sure you know a lot of things. And I know Jesus is real. I know that Jesus is the living Son of God. I know that Jesus died on the cross for me. I know that if I believe in what he did in the cross, I will be with him. But here's the question. Does anybody else know that? I was hoping you knew that. But knowing it wouldn't be enough either. Do you feel it? See, here's the thing. In another church at another time, I had to call one of my elders who was in another country burying their father to tell that elder that I was at his home with the police and that his spouse was found dead. That was what may be the hardest phone call I've ever made. It had to be a phone call because he was in Africa. And I want to tell you something about that moment. Suddenly what you know doesn't matter. But what you feel is everything. I had to feel the presence of Jesus in that moment to effectively minister to him. And I had to trust that Jesus was not just working through my heartbeat, but also his. Because I knew Jesus was not in the heartbeat of his wife until the resurrection moment. The point is, knowing is good, but in a crisis, feeling God's presence is just as important. As I studied Matthew 27 this week, and as I looked at Matthew 27, and Matthew 27 is Levi Matthew. He was a tax collector, a Jewish tax collector for the Romans, not a popular profession. The IRS is never anyone's, buddy, but even more so in the time of Jesus. This is his account of Jesus' ascension to the cross. And in Matthew 27, Matthew Levi, he points out 3 people that Jesus comes into contact with as he journeys to the cross. Judas, Pilate, and Simon the Cyrene. I want to just take a few minutes because it's Communion Sabbath. And I want to look at who knew what, where, and how. Who knew what, where, and how, and what good did it do them? No, wait. Who knew what, when, where, and how, and what good did it do Jesus? And is knowing something enough to push you to do what's wrong or right? Because some people think they can't be wrong because they know what's right. And is it really just knowing what's right that stops us from doing what's wrong? So I will start with a very controversial figure. Judas. Did he know? Did he know who Jesus was? He walked with Jesus for 3.5 years. He heard Jesus say over and over, the Son of Man is going to go up to Jerusalem. Will he be persecuted and killed and rise again on the 3rd day? He heard Jesus say that over and over and over. He was there when Peter says, "You're the living Son of God." Did Judas know? Well, my slide doesn't want to change for you. There it goes. Let's ask Judas. Here is his words. I have sinned. I have betrayed innocent blood. And then, The good church leader said, "Too bad, Judas. Shame on you. What is that to us? That's your problem. That's your responsibility." They're not even denying it. Judas threw the money into the temple and left, and he went away, and he was over. Did he know? Did he know? It's uncomfortable, but it's on the screen. Did he know? And it didn't stop him from doing one of the most wrong things that have ever happened in the history of the universe. What about Pilate? Poor guy. Just a government official. Just trying to do his job. Just trying to keep the emperor happy. Just trying to prevent a civil war from breaking out between the Jews and the Romans. Now, we can assume he didn't know. We can give him some space, right? Like he's not Judas. He wasn't with Jesus for 3.5 years. He's not Judas. He wasn't a Jew. He's a Roman government official. It's not his fault, right? Surely he didn't know better. Well. God will make sure we know. While Pilate was sitting at the judge's seat, his wife sent him a text message. Don't have anything to do with that, what man? That innocent man. For I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. Did Pilate know? He knew. He knew. Knowing the truth does not protect you from doing horrific things. Even when God would invoke a spontaneous gift of prophecy and send someone a dream and a vision. We believe in dreams and visions, don't we, Seventh-day Adventists? You see, some people think they know what's right. And that entitles them to behave wrong. And for those who think they know what's right, you may start your small group with Judas and Pilate. But I would rather be in the small group with Simon the Cyrene. He don't know much. He doesn't have a lofty Roman education. He's not been appointed by the Roman Senate. He seems to be of Jewish descent, living in Africa. But he's not from Palestine. He's traveled there for the Passover. He has no idea who this Jesus guy is. And he comes up on Jesus in the midst of a conflict. He knows nothing except for he needs to get his lamb to the temple. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon. And they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. He didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't know what crime Jesus had been accused of. He didn't know if the sentence was just or unjust. He didn't even know the significance of who Jesus was. Judas knew this was the living Son of God. Pilate had his wife entertain spontaneous gift of prophecy to be informed of who Jesus was. Simon didn't know. But is the only one of the three that helped lift Jesus' burden. We need to know the heartbeat of Jesus. We need to know the big T truth. We can never afford to use what we know as an excuse to do evil and increase the burden on Jesus and his church. I love to be in the company of the Cyrene. He might not know where to find Exodus or Psalms or Jeremiah in the scriptures. But he is quick to lift the burden of others, even when he does not know. On that day, Jesus needed help. It's an uncomfortable thought. But those who were entrusted with the truth didn't show up to help, but to condemn. If your truth makes you someone who condemns, understand it is Jesus who you're condemning. And thank him for the opportunity to make it right at the communion table. Because it was the truth of Judas and the truth of Pilate that caused Jesus to collapse on his way to Golgotha. And it was the ignorance of Simon who got him to the cross. For if that had not happened, we would not be here. Thank God for those who are simple. Those who don't have to put doing the right thing through the little T truth filter on repeat. Because Jesus had been broken. Jesus had been spit on. Jesus had been whipped. Jesus had been name called. Jesus had been defeated. Jesus had been accused. Jesus had been lied about. Jesus had been traumatized. Jesus was in emotional distress. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came on the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus began to cry. He cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani?" By the way, that's Aramaic for those who don't know. And there are only a few passages in the New Testament that's Aramaic, and let me tell you why. Jesus did not speak, he may have spoke Greek, but in the street, he definitely wouldn't have spoke Greek. He may have spoke or read Hebrew, but definitely in the street he would not have. In the street, in the times of Jesus, the language spoken was Aramaic. And there are only a few passages in the New Testament left in Aramaic. And there's a reason why Matthew didn't translate it into Greek, but left it in Aramaic. And the reason when you find Aramaic in the New Testament is the author, in this case Matthew, thinks what the person, in this case Jesus, is saying so important that he does not want to risk transliteration error. And so he says it verbatim what Jesus said in the street language. And then bracketed off in Greek, which we then translate into English. What am I telling you? Matthew believes this passage is of ultimate importance, so important of what Jesus said at that moment on the cross, that he will not risk being the one who messed up the words of Jesus. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means my God. My God. Why have you forsaken me? See, when I said Jesus needed a simple man like Simon to help him because he was emotionally exhausted, I wasn't joking. I wasn't extrapolating. I wasn't reading between the lines. No. Matthew made us have it very clear in both Aramaic and Greek. That even in the crisis of the greatest crisis of the universe, Jesus himself needed to feel God. You think he doesn't know God? You think think he does? Is this a literal question? Do you think he's asking the Father, hey, where is your geographical location? Can you do location sharing on your device? Do you think he doesn't know the absolute theological truth of his Father's in heaven? No. Jesus at this moment is not asking God to give him a piece of truth. He's not like us. We just give us the next piece of truth. He's saying, I need to feel my Father's presence. The guilt of the world is on me. The stress of the good people who know the truth is killing me. I know exactly where you are, Father, and I know exactly that this was agreed upon before the beginning of the world. I know exactly everything. I am the truth. Why can't I feel you? And in case you're not getting the context of how much Jesus knows, let me help you out here. Jesus is not praying his prayer. He's praying David's words. Make no mistake, he knows everything. And he doesn't even use his own words to ask to feel the Father. He prays the word of David from Psalms 22. Why? Because he wants you to know he knows what it feels like to not be able to sense the presence of God in his life. He uses David's words. A human's words. You see, Jesus, he was emotionally whole. Jesus, when we talked about Galatians 5 and the fruit, there wasn't a day in his life that wasn't full of love. There wasn't a day in his life that wasn't full of joy. There wasn't a day in his life that wasn't full of peace. There wasn't a day in his life that he didn't have patience. Even with those Pharisees, he had to call serpents. There wasn't a day in his life that he wasn't kind to people who were betraying him with a kiss. Oh, we love you, Jesus, as we sell you out. There wasn't a day in his life that he wasn't full of goodness, faithfulness, gentleness to his enemies, and self-control. And I love the self-control, and I have to move this along, sorry. But I want to tell you, Jesus had self-control, because if I would have had some of the power, just to give just a little bit of the power he had, and face some of the nasty people he faced, things might have went down. I'm saying that James and John may have convinced me to bring fire down from heaven. But Jesus maintained control. Jesus felt forsaken so that you could be whole. If anyone can give you permission to have feelings and to stop being a robot, it's Jesus. In this reflecting on this, I have found this interesting quote that I'm going to close out with. And it's from a book, A Call to Stand Apart. Anyone want to have a call to stand apart? Anyone want to make a decision at the table today? They heard Jesus cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And then she writes, visualize the scene. The sinless Son of God hangs dying on the cross. His back is shredded from being lashed twice. His hands are the hands that continuously reach out to bless others, are now nailed to wooden bars. His feet that walk tirelessly on missions of love are also nailed. His royal brow is punctured by the thrones from a mocking crown. He suffers it all without the sustaining presence of his Father. Never forget. Never forget. Never forget that it is for you that Jesus agreed to bear this unbelievable burden of guilt. He died to open the gates of paradise for you. Jesus felt abandoned in the biggest crisis, not just of his life, the biggest crisis of eternity, so that you would know you're not abandoned in whatever you face. And the only person who helped him on that day was a know-nothing nobody. Never been to a Daniel and Revelation seminar. Never had the opportunity to dig into luscious tofu or fried chicken. Never had the opportunity to criticize those around him. Only was willing to assist a complete stranger with the heaviest burden the universe would ever know. As we partake of this communion today, I ask you, are you a Judas? I ask you, are you a pilot? I ask you, are you willing to be a know-nothing nobody like Simon? Because you won't get to lift the cross for the Savior of the world. And he bore the ultimate emotional stress point of all time and space. But you may get the opportunity to help one of your brothers or sisters finish the journey of their cross-bearing. So we will transition. Even though my slides won't, we will transition to feeling the heartbeat of Jesus. And next week, we will begin a new series. Big problems, bigger emotions. Learning how to manage your emotions in a crisis. Because at this table, we're committing to knowing capital T Jesus and feeling the heartbeat of Jesus. We will now transition to the ordinance of humility. Those of you who do not know this practice, it is a practice that Seventh-day Adventists and other denominations practice at the time of communion. They depart, they go to various rooms, and just as Jesus washed the feet of his disciples on the night he was betrayed, we simulate that experience. In Stutler Hall, there will be a room for families to practice that together. In the primary room just down the hallway from Stutler, there will be a room for the ladies. And right across here in the kindergarten room, there will be a room for the gentlemen. And we will go there and we will do this sort of symbolic gesture of saying all people are equal. Then as quickly as we may, we will return back here for the ordinances and complete the communion. Let me pray for you, and we'll depart. Dear Heavenly Father, may we transition to not just caring about what people know, but caring about what people feel. May the foot washing or the ordinance of humility help put us on solid ground if we have strayed. And may we make our hearts right, not just with you, but each other. In Jesus' name, amen.